Greetings, friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. In his next post on social media, Donald Trump criticized his predecessor, Joseph Biden, for giving Ukraine the opportunity only to defend itself from Russian aggression and not to attack the invader. Trump rightly noted that it is impossible to defeat the invader by defense alone. It's like a flawless sports team that cannot attack, but can only defend against the opponent's attacks. However, it remains unclear how Donald Trump envisions the further development of events in the Russian-Ukrainian war. Does this significant statement of his, made, by the way, almost precisely on the very same day that the Russian forces aggressively struck an American enterprise in the Ukrainian city of Mukachevo, truly mean that he would genuinely like to adopt a much more decisive and impactful approach toward the Kremlin and its ongoing actions? Or, on the contrary, is the American president stating that the time when Ukraine could have defeated Russia through active offensives has been lost, and that this is not the responsibility of the current American president, but only of his predecessor? So all we can do is speculate about what Trump means when he says that interesting times lie ahead. Does this mean that Ukraine will be allowed to use long-range weapons to destroy Russian strategic targets on the territory of the Russian Federation itself? Or, on the contrary, does it mean that Trump will push Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to make greater concessions to Putin, while Putin himself shows no interest whatsoever in either making concessions or meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky? The fact that no meeting is being prepared and that all discussions about it were purely virtual is now being acknowledged even in the White House. The optimistic statements made by Donald Trump after his phone conversation with the Russian president, which, I remind you, took place precisely during the negotiations between the American president and the president of Ukraine, as well as European leaders, turned out to be either premature or based on a misunderstanding of Putin's reaction regarding the most important aspects of resolving the Russia-Ukraine war for Trump. In other words, we are essentially in a situation where we have to hope that common sense will prevail in American foreign policy. Yes, it's absolutely unrealistic to defeat the aggressor in a situation where you are only defending yourself and can't do anything to destroy the resources of the country attacking you. Yes, it's very difficult to win in a situation where you're hoping that the aggressive country on whose territory there is no war will realize the full danger of economic sanctions and agree, if not to peace, then at least to a truce. But we shouldn't think that Donald Trump's predecessors, Barack Obama or Joseph Biden, were unaware of this. Of course, they understood that the position of a country that is only defending itself from aggression is a weak one. They could not have failed to grasp the full aggressiveness of Moscow's actions both in 2014 and in 2022. They understood that the occupation and annexation of Crimea effectively destroys international law. Barack Obama himself acknowledged this during a meeting with Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk in the Oval Office back in 2014. But a question may arise: why then did the United States not act more actively? Why didn't they help Ukraine to attack and not just defend itself? We all know the answer to this question perfectly well. Because the United States was afraid of the threat of nuclear war. Because Russian President Putin managed to turn the situation regarding the future course of events into a case of nuclear blackmail, and Putin continues this blackmail. I think the main difference in the events we have witnessed since 2014, and especially after 2022, is the transformation of nuclear weapons from a means of deterrence into a tool of blackmail in international politics. And let's be honest, this tool works quite effectively. Every American administration since 2014, in trying to figure out how to help Ukraine defend itself against aggression and restore its territorial integrity, has made preventing a nuclear conflict its top priority. Not just a nuclear conflict between the United States and the Russian Federation, but even a nuclear strike by a nuclear-armed country against a non-nuclear one, that is, a nuclear strike by Russia against Ukraine. Putin understands this weak spot of the West perfectly well, continues to manipulate these fears and thus shifts the situation into one of Ukrainian defense rather than an attack on Russian positions. And here a rather simple question arises. Is Donald Trump ready to change this dangerous paradigm? Is he ready to take risks in his relationship with Putin? Is he ready to use the situation where the American president would be considered crazy enough in the Kremlin not to fear the nuclear threat? In order for Ukraine to be able to attack Russian positions on the territory of the Russian Federation itself without any problems, to destroy Russia's military-industrial complex, the oil and gas sector of the Russian Federation, and the positions of the Russian army and navy not only in the occupied territories of Ukraine and not only in the border regions of Russia, but wherever these targets pose a real and serious threat to Ukraine. Wherever the Russians are preparing for new wars. This is question number one. So far, the American president has shown no desire to take risks and has demonstrated attempts to negotiate with Putin. However, it is possible that the current brazen reaction of the Russian president to any of Trump's initiatives, which clearly humiliates the American president and forces him to realize that this humiliation is seen both in the United States itself and around the world, may compel Donald Trump to change his position toward Putin. But for now, this is only a prediction, which has no grounds to be considered a foregone conclusion. Interesting times await us. Thank you, friends. Stay on this channel, subscribe to it, follow me on my social media and on my Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee and Donatella channels, which help support and develop these resources. Make use of the sponsorship feature right here on YouTube. Victory and peace to you. Good luck.